Well, for more analysis on President Trump's proposed budget, let's bring in Steve Pruitt. He's managing partner at Watts Partners and was former staff director of the Committee on the Budget of the U.S. House of Representatives. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So, Trump's proposal, we saw some of his budget priorities. What's your take on this?
Well, first and foremost, this is not a budget. It's a blueprint, it's an outline, it essentially communicates to us and the world what his budget priorities would be when he submits an actual budget. This is just one slice of the pie, so to speak. Secondly, I think it's clearly out of balance. It reflects spending priorities that, quite frankly, once the actual budget comes up, would suggest that this indeed will be dead on arrival. And then lastly, I think I would say that much of the content that he's put out so far is essentially a rerun of things that we've seen in history of budget discussions in past years. These are plans that they basically dusted off from the Heritage Foundation and others. And it's not to say that those are bad, but when things are out of whack and out of balance like these are, then they don't play well politically.
So being that this is still a blueprint at this point, if you're a global viewer trying to see how much weight you should put in this, what should they be thinking from this?
Well, I think two things. Number one, we're entering into, if you will, this week's made-for-TV drama episode, in that this issue is put out for public debate. It certainly is going to draw a good deal of public debate, and as a result, chaos will ensue. Secondly, though, I think the concern that I would have if I were looking at this from afar is, are these folks ever going to get their act together and actually start governing? Because throwing out proposals, throwing out charges, if you will, may sound good, may play well politically on TV,
right.
But this is not a ratings game. This is governing. This is people's lives and livelihoods that are being held in the president, the Congress's hands right now. And as a result, you know, if they don't get their act together here pretty soon,
right,
all we're going to see is another year of gridlock and no accomplishments.
Now, with that being said, Trump is obviously following up on his promises about this America First approach, and his budget priorities really show this shift away from this so-called soft power to hard power. For our viewers who aren't familiar with some of these terms and what it actually means for them, help us break that down.
Well, hard power essentially means military force. And we're talking weapons and weapon systems, increasing military manpower, and the focus there, again, is going to war. Soft power is those activities like the State Department, where we engage other parts of the world around culture, around music, other activities that, again, are intended to show the world the things that bring us together versus highlighting those issues that separate us and force us beyond dialogue and into disastrous military action.
So then when we see the limit to funding like institutions like the World Bank and cuts to foreign aid, what message does that send then to the rest of the world?
Well, first and foremost, it's consistent with what he campaigned on, about becoming more isolationist, not participating in organizations that, in essence, are focusing on the world good. So I think he's true to his campaign promises, and I think that's one message that folks need to understand. This guy is going to stay on agenda. But secondly, it also gives, I think, folks some hope in that looking at what is going on, there are a lot of people, the majority of the people, who really have got their heads on straight, and they're going to approach all of these issues and balance out these spending decisions along the way in ways that will, quite frankly, continue our engagement across the globe.
Now, as we look at some of these spending decisions, we're looking at agencies like labor, agriculture, education, health, really getting these cuts, and especially the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. What could the environmental impact be if we scale back so much?
Well, if it actually happens, which, again, I have doubts that much of it will happen, but if it were to happen, obviously it would be disastrous. and we and our children and our grandchildren would end up paying for it. But I don't see it happening. In the 1980s, when we saw this movie the last time with the original cast, as I'd like to describe it, the movie played, the reviews came in, and we moved on to the next thing because, again, it's great entertainment, made for TV drama, but the reality is we're a superpower. At some point, we have to act like one.
All right, well, we'll definitely have to see what happens when it goes through Congress. Thank you so much, as always. Steve Pruitt, Managing Partner at Watts Partners and former Staff Director of the Committee on the Budget of the U.S. House of Representatives.